Today I'm going to talk a little bit about placing beads in your tatting. So I actually used a bead aid, that's what this is, to pre-string some beads onto my shuttle. And this is not the only way that you can do that. You can also use a crochet hook, or you can use something like a beetle needle, which has a little notch at the tip that allows you to slide those beads down onto your thread. I am using beads that are too big. Personally, I think they're too big for my thread, and the reason I'm doing that is so you can see them just a little bit easier as we work. So I'm going to take my bead aid out now, and we will get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about placing beads inside of a ring. And if we want to place a bead so that the bead will sit on the thread at the top of a picot, then we have to make sure that our bead is inside of our ring when we start tatting. So I've put the bead inside the ring here, and we'll just tat a couple of stitches. There we go. Now we'll move the bead into place, and now you can see, because the bead is on the thread, and this ring thread is what will make our picot, that our bead is now sitting on the picot. And yes, I could make this just a little bit tighter. There, so now the bead sits a little closer to the base. And again, these beads are just a little bit too big, I think, for this thread. This is probably 20. These are 6/0 beads. These are more of a knitting bead than a tatting bead, but they were convenient, so we're going to play with them. They actually fit the Olympus thick really nice, so that's what I've been using them in. But let's get back to what we're doing. Now that we have set a bead in, like on a picot inside of a ring, another way that you can set a bead is by placing it from the shuttle thread down into the bead, or down into the ring. But what will happen is it will sit and it will have a thread over the top of it. And that's because when we put this inside of our ring by using the shuttle thread, we are going to have this extra thread from the ring that goes over the top of it. Sometimes you may want your bead to do this, and it's important to know that this is how you would set your bead inside. So those are two ways that you can set your bead. One is by having it in the ring, one is by having it on the shuttle and sliding it down. And you can see that the picot thread goes through this bead and sits on top of this bead. Now, another way that you can add a bead to your tatting is by placing it over a picot. So here I've made a little bit longer picot so that we'll have a little room to join into it. And I am going to just sort of tat a few stitches, 3 and 4. All right, and then we can close our ring. Go. So this was, again, the bead that was inside the ring before we started, so it's placed on top of the picot. This one is the bead that we added by sliding it down from the shuttle. And you can actually do that in between rings, so you can drop a bead down in between the rings so that you can sort of place them in between and kind of make a fun little bare thread space bead section. But we can also go in and we can add a bead over a picot. You can do this in several different ways. One of them is by, let me grab another bead, using your bead aid. So you can take your bead aid and put it through the picot, and then just slide your bead down and over and on top of the picot. And then you'll have this little loop at the top that you will join through, and you can either use a pick or you can use your crochet hook to do that joining. It's up to you. Sorry, I had to flip that around a little bit. The other option is that you can use a small crochet hook like this or a beetle needle. And again, you'll just hook that picot somehow, you'll pop the bead over, and now again you can use that crochet hook or your pick to pull your ring thread up through to join. I'm going to make an up join to finish this. So now this bead we set in place by placing it over a picot. So you can see that there's 2 threads from that picot that go through our bead. And we'll just sort of close out. There we go. Close out our ring. So then that is 4 different ways that we can set a bead. These are not the only ways that you can set a bead, but these are the 4 sort of more common ways that you would set a bead. Oops, I pulled it too hard. Into tatting. So that gives you ideas on different ways that you can use beads in your tatting. And I used this, let me see if I can find it quick, for one of my wrist straps with some split rings. And yes, those are the same beads. And I was able to slide my beads in on the bare thread space in between on the 2 different shuttles, as well as by placing them at the top and the bottom of the bead based on where I had it in my ring before I closed it. So just an idea for different ways that you can set beads into your tatting. And this, again, this is just rings. There are different ways that you can set beads in your tatting for chains as well, but we're just covering rings today. Hopefully this has been instructional and helpful for you, and I will do my best to get a few more of these short little videos up soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the fun places, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.